On a scale of 1 to 100, your specific person loves you 1,000. But honestly, this video is less about them and more about us. Because whenever I make statements like that, I do have some people stating, well, if they love me so much, where are they? If they are breaking the scale of how much they care about me, what's going on? Why do I feel like I might not be seeing that? But the answer is not them, because I can guarantee you this is what they are perceiving in their reality. The answer is us and the illusion that we accidentally place on ourselves. We almost all of the time feel we are doing worse than we are based on a specific reason. And that's because your reality is so positive and so abundant and so amazing that when something very small, very minutely negative shows up in your reality, it feels so large in comparison. Almost like if you were to take a drop of dye and drop it in a water or a glass of water. It feels like it completely overtakes it, but in essence, it's such a very small, minute form of that. And I can actually perform a little technique in this video that you're going to take part in that I can prove to you that you are so much closer than you could ever imagine, and all of your worries are literally just within our own mind that we accidentally exaggerated, and your specific person is already on their way to you. And here's how we're going to do that. We're going to use the same exact scale that we or your specific person used at the beginning in which they rated you 1,000. So I want you to think of a scale that goes from 0 to 100. So 0 is the side of the coin in which you don't know your specific person, you've never met them, you don't talk to them, you absolutely have nothing going for you. And 100, that end of the scale is you two are married or you've achieved your end. And what I want you to do on the scale is I want you to rate yourself. Where do you feel you are on this scale? It could be any number, it could be any point, it could be any distance. Just make sure that you pick the point based on an outside perspective. Meaning, I want you to act like you are not you and you are looking in at your situation, but you had all of the exact same information. You knew exactly what you were thinking, what you were doing, and what your reality looked like. What would you rate yourself on this scale? And the answer is going to surprise you, because almost everyone, when we start to really think about this, rates themselves so much higher than they could ever imagine. You could be thinking and assuming, I'm going to give up, everything's over, it's disastrous, there's no contact, there's a third party, and you would still, I bet, rate yourself above 50, right? And even if you didn't, still, it seems bizarre to think that your manifestation or anything is disastrous, even if you rate yourself a 20. Imagine you are going on a 10-hour flight and you were 2 hours in. Would you assume, based on those 2 hours, that it meant that you could not get to the end? The answer would be, of course, that sounds crazy, right? Of course, even though I'm 2 hours in, I'm a pretty good distance already towards my goal. I should continue moving forward. Now, I guarantee you, though, most people, almost everyone, will rate themselves so much higher than you can imagine, because if you start to think of what's going for you, what your specific person thinks about you, what you feel that you're capable of, you are going to understand that you are way closer to your goal than you could ever imagine. And I can actually give you 2 instances of this. So one person, because I like to sometimes ask this question in coaching sessions, anytime we feel like giving up. So anytime you feel like worrying, I would ask yourself this question. But I had one person who, their specific person, they felt like everything was going not the way they wanted. Their SP was with a third party. They had blocked them. Everything was going down. They felt like they were absolutely devastated with everything. But again, it doesn't matter what's happening in our external reality, because your reality can change at the flip of a dime or the flip of a coin if we just assume it to be so. Anything can change in any minute. And so I asked them to rate themselves, and can you guess what they rated themselves? To their goal, because again, these instances and these occurrences and circumstances are just temporary in the grand scheme of things. They rated themselves a 74, okay? Think about that, a 74. They felt devastated even in this area of their life. They thought they were 3/4 of the way there, amazing, right? And I would say that's actually lowballing it. If you really think about the scale that you're actually at, you're always at a 99 or a 100, meaning you are just moments away from what you want, but sometimes it doesn't feel that way. And again, I want you to remember, don't rate this based on what you're feeling, rate it on how your best friend or someone else would rate you on your ability to get to the outcome. I then had another individual who was going through almost the same exact thing. It was no contact, third party was going on, and guess what they rated themselves? A 70, right? Still a 70 and a 74. Think back to the idea of a flight. If it's a 10-hour flight and you are 7 hours in, the thought that you're not going to make it or you have to turn around is ridiculous, right? And it starts to get that way when you really think about it. So take a moment, and I can't see your immediate answer, but try to think about that in the comments. Comment your number of how close you think you are, and tell me if you think it is greater than you think. But remember, you want to think of it from an outside perspective, meaning you are thinking it of some objective viewpoint. Meaning if someone were to take your position and were to continue your manifestation, what would you rate yourselves? So if we were to swap places and I were to try to do everything I know in your position, how close would you have set our manifestation towards your specific person? And honestly, what I would do is I would do this every single day. Rate yourself every single day on your scale and ask yourself, what evidence supports this? So maybe you say you're a 60 or a 55 or an 85. Why is it that you are adding to this number? What is it that makes it a 50? Again, in the positive. So what have you done? What happened? What occurred? And what could we do to make ourselves 5 points closer? That's what I want you to ask yourself every single day. So every day, what's my score, and how can I just add a little bit, a few more points to this? What would that look like? And you'll find it is so much easier to add these small points to it than if we are to try to go from 0 to 100. Now, that is totally capable. That's quantum leaping, right? We all know how to do it. But in these times, again, this is a scale that we want to use whenever we're feeling doubtful or worried or sad or depressed or in any sort of spiral. Take yourself out of your state, out of your emotion, again, from an outside perspective. What would I rate myself? And then each day I want you to ask yourself, how can I be 5 points greater? Or even 1 point greater? How can I be 1 point greater? Because even if you went up 1 point and you were at 0, so let's say you were 0 and you added 1% every single day, in 3 months you would be with your specific person at the maximum. So just think about that for a moment. As well as this, I want you to take a moment kind of adding on to this idea of, why do you feel you're at this number? Why do you feel you're at 78? Why do you feel you're at 98, right? If you're at that point, what are 5 things that you feel support this idea of you being at that score? So maybe it's emotional shifts. Maybe it's synchronicities, maybe it's compliments, maybe it's internal growth. What is it that we feel is amplifying us and adding to this number? Because the more we realize and understand what's adding to the number, the more we'll be able to amplify it. Because most of the time, we accidentally focus on what we don't have. If we're at an 80, we focus on the 20 that we don't have, and that's why we feel as if everything's going wrong, or that's why we feel like giving up. But that is absolutely insane to focus on the 20 when you have 80 in your favor. Or even, again, if the number is way lower, let's say you feel like you're 25. Again, if you were to add just a little bit each and every day, again, not even worrying about it, not even trying that hard, even I would say maybe watching these videos is that added little bit each and every day. And you can also use a specific affirmation if you ever feel worried. So I want you to say to yourself each and every day in this moment, if you're really wanting to act this idea out today, I'm already closer than I can even see, it's already folding. I'm already closer than I can even see, it's already unfolding, or something to that nature. Just given the effect that you are way closer than you realize, because I would guarantee you, your number is way larger than you think it. I've not had someone do this and not be absolutely surprised with their number, thinking that everything was horrible, everything was gone, but it's only because we, again, fall into that illusion of thinking and focusing on what is not working out for us rather than what is. And so that's where then we fall under this idea that everything isn't happening. But you can even add to this, if you, when we think about that idea of asking yourself 5 things that add to your number, you could also write down, instead of thinking about the future, right? Instead of thinking about what you need to do, write down milestones that you've actually achieved with your specific person. Maybe it was better communication. Maybe it was confidence or self-love or something. Maybe you got out of no contact with your specific person. Maybe you guys had an awesome date. Maybe you ran into them on the street. Maybe you heard someone talking about them. You had some signs, right? That's exactly what I want you to think about. And when you think about those milestones, the more concrete this number is going to feel to you, and the more you're going to understand, again, like I've always been saying, you are so much closer to your manifestation than you could ever imagine. And remember as well, if you ever do see negative things in your reality, that's only because it's like the water example. It's a small drop of dye that seems like it consumes the whole thing because it is so small. Your reality in life is so good that very small negative things seem to be so large because in comparison, you have nothing to compare it to. Imagine if you're at a concert or a large group of people and everyone has a blue shirt on and one person has a red shirt on. Who are you going to pay attention to, right? You're going to immediately pick out the red shirt. And that's why then you can say to yourself, if anytime you see something negative, I want you to say to yourself, this only stands out because everything else is working. This only stands out because everything else is working. I'm only paying attention to this negative thing because my life is so amazing. And I know that's funny to think about flipping that idea on its head, but it's absolutely true. This only stands out because everything else is working perfectly. And as soon as you start to understand you are doing so much better than you could imagine, you're going to get successes like this person that I absolutely had to include in a video because it was so awesome. So we met, as you can see, on Tuesday. So today is Friday, and I got this message yesterday. And on our call, I talked about this idea. I basically showed them that they are doing so much better than they could ever imagine. Everything they perceive as negative is entirely an illusion, and this is what they manifested in just a couple days. And at this point, they were not seeing their specific person, they were in no contact, and they ended up seeing and hearing from a mutual friend that their specific person was talking about how much they like them. And I had to blurt out their name at the bottom, but that's what they manifested and saw in their reality just a couple days after understanding they are doing so much better than they could ever imagine. And so that's exactly what this technique is going to do for you. By you understanding how close you actually are to your manifestation, it's going to change your sense of identity. It's going to change your sense of who you are. It's going to change the sense of how you actually interact or look at your reality. It's going to be totally different. You're going to understand that you've been actually focusing on the one red shirt individual in the sea of blue, or the one negative, very small, minute negative thing in a sea of positivity. That's your reality right now, whether you think so or not. And sometimes that's actually the only thing that keeps us stuck, right? Because even the person in that success story felt stuck. They weren't sure what to do. They were actually focusing on fixing all of the negative things that were happening. But instead, if we shifted their focus to what's going right, we start to understand the negative is always an illusion. The bad things happening in our reality aren't really bad at all, right? It's just the change of the values that we place on our reality that make us think that way. If you did have any questions on this, make sure to comment them down below. After you comment your number 0 to 100, again, from your outside perspective, how would I rate your manifestation? You can even, think about it in my way. How would I rate how close you are to your manifestation? How close would I say you are to being with your specific person? So comment that down below, and then comment any questions you have as well. You can also reach out to me with a personal question or a personal message or something if you didn't want to post it publicly at kyleaugustcoaching.com. As always, if you know for a fact that this is going to change your mind, change your reality, you're going to manifest exactly what is in that success story, leave a thumbs up on this video, and thank you so much for subscribing. And again, as always, huge shout out to all of my members. Thank you so much. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video tomorrow.